Welcome to Finance Leaders Retirement Insights, the broadcast where we sit down with thought leaders in the world of finance who reveal their unexpected wisdom on the issues impacting retirement.
Welcome to the Finance Leaders Podcast. This is the show where we highlight the stories, insights, and expertise of financial professionals making lasting impact. Today, we're joined by Mark Wagner, a retirement expert and author of Building Financial Fences. His book is packed with timeless principles to help people retire with confidence, protect what they've built, and create lasting legacy. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Mark, every advisor I speak to has a different story or a path to what they do today. What was originally the thing that kind of drew you into retirement planning, and what keeps you passionate about it today?
That's a great question. Actually, a surprising question. Mostly came from doing ministry work that I saw changes in the policies as everything evolves. We all know that things change. While we may resist it, I found a lot of people changing documentation and not giving as much money to churches, and therefore the principles of the money that they had to operate on, how the legacies could grow when grandma, grandpa passed away to leave it to the surviving families, had to really revolve around the idea of having a trust to avoid probate. But then the money that was held in the trust needed to be allocated different. So it was a necessary change to think maybe I could go help in the financial arena and help people understand from a stewardship standpoint how they can make more money. From a biblical standpoint, the parable of the talents. How could you go from being the guy that buried your money in the backyard because you didn't trust the system to being the guy that went out and said, "Hey, I can double my money in a regulatory way." As we know in my business, the rule of 72 is how can I make your money double in 10 years? And that was a necessary thing to help my community to be able to help other people understand things to do. And that was the attraction, and that's the passion yet today.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I know over the years you've helped many people transition from their working years into a secure retirement. What do you see as kind of the biggest mistake that a lot of pre-retirees make?
Not getting sound financial help. Billy Bob, the deacon of your church, I'm not challenging his intent, but what are his licenses? And so one of the things that people will help with, if I talk about a death claim, he may come over and say, "Sally, you don't need to do anything right now." Is that true or not? His intentions are true, but if things are age-based and health-based, it matters what you do today. In some cases, it may not. In other cases, it may preclude the fact that you simply are not eligible to take that money and roll over. Some companies give bonuses and your age to determine that. So that's one thing, but mostly what it is it's knowledge. The people that need information generally get it from the wrong sources, and there is a fear factor of that. I'm already doing the wrong thing, but I'm comfortable with it, and I don't want to do the right thing because I don't know anything about it. So if you give people, and this is tough to hear what I'm getting ready to tell you, but there's an impoverished mentality with a lot of people. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And so I'm more comfortable doing the wrong thing than doing something different and having to learn about it. And so it sounds too good to be true. How come I never heard of those different options before as far as retirement planning? And so it's easier to sell fear than it is to be able to actually help educate people. And I spend most of my time as an educator. And I think that's the most difficult thing is more people are going to seminars now. They're asking great questions, talking to trusted advisors, and that's making a difference. And it just comes down to education.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point. I mean, lack of information is kind of the biggest challenge. I mean, it's not the things that you know that is the problem. It's the things that you don't know, or the things that you do know that are not so. Again, lack of information. Now, in your book, you use a lot of powerful analogies to explain retirement and financial strategies. Why do you think that storytelling, works really well when talking about money?
I'm impressed with your questions. Thank you. The book was written more to help identify who I am so that you could look at somebody, as a veteran, as a community citizen. It's like, who do you want to take your advice from? Everybody's got something to say. And generally, the right thing is the right thing, no matter who says it. But the early onset of just doing church work, I started doing church work when I was 12 with sermons and whatnot in a variety of different churches. And the Bible is just loaded with allegories and parables and things like that. And so the mentor was reading allegories again about financial planning. And it seems to make a lot of sense because when you talk like a broker, I find that, I'm in the industry and I hear some people talking, I have no idea what you just said. What did you say? And sometimes it's a matter of, culturally, if I'm in different cultures, what did I say may not make as much sense. So I find a simple story that if you have a fence around your cow or your dog, if there's a hole in the fence, your dog's going to get out. Well, if that was your money, do you have your fence secure to keep your cow in? Or a tomato plant. If the tomato plant grew and you pick the tomato off of it, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to eat it? Am I going to can it? Or am I going to save it for seeds? People understand those analogies intuitively, and they understand that I've got to plant something now and have a harvest later. They know that there's things that come on, like if we have flowers or tomato plants and it's going to frost, there's a triggering environmental thing that took place. What did you do? Did you cover up your flowers so that the frost didn't kill them? So in your life, if there's a frost because I got sick, I'm incapacitated, it's not that I'm not going to be alive forever. I mean, in short term, because obviously we hope the doctor does his job. But what can I do in that short term thing that I don't lose my flowers or lose my crop? Those analogies help people just understand things I already intuitively know, and it makes it easier to communicate where people feel more at peace so they can go to bed and go, I made a good decision. And that's I guess it's just become part of my nature to talk with a lot of stories so that you and I can connect, as opposed to talking jargon and technical terms that at the end of the day, it's like you're not going to understand it. You can nod and read it, but then sometimes you go, hey, can you turn the paperwork upside down? You're looking at it, but you're not even reading it. They see the charts and they're enamored by stuff, but it doesn't help them.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point. I think a lot of advisors, they feel like the more sophisticated they sound, the bigger words they use, right? The people are going to understand it more. Actually, what they're doing, they're confusing somebody, and sometimes people are sitting there nodding their head, but they have no clue what that person is talking about. So using, strong visual like building financial fences is a really great way to segue into having a conversation that you would have with somebody at at a level where everybody understands what's going on. And again, using analogies really helps to bridge that gap of that lack of information, because I think a lot of people, the reason why they don't work with an advisor is because they're afraid of the conversation they're going to have, because so many people feel that they're misunderstood. And I think what you just brought up, having the ability to have that simpler story, having that an analogy that you use, it just gives a peace of mind to your client. So what, in practice specifically, if you can go a little bit more in detail, what does, building financial fences means when you are working with a client and helping them to prepare for retirement?
Well, I actually have a visual board here. I don't know if you'd like me to show it, or I can just go ahead and talk. But what does the idea of building financial fences? I'm going to go back to being the farm boy. When I was a young boy, we're working on the farm, and the farmer, my dad, would say, "Did you check the fences?" And of course, it's lunchtime. Well, no, I didn't. So I'd have to go out and go do it, and you come back, and of course, all the other helpers or your siblings would eat all the food. I'm a slow learner. Next day, you sit back down at lunch, go, "Hey, Mark, did you check the fences?" No, I didn't. Well, you come back and all of a sudden you realize it's like my job is to check the fences. They're dad's cows or they're the farmer's cows, but my job was to make sure the fences were up, because if you didn't have a fence, you're going to lose your cattle, so to speak. And so why I came up with the fence idea was that if you don't build sturdy fences and one design for what you have, obviously a fence to keep cows in is different than a fence that's going to keep chicken in. So, Daniel, what kind of money do you have? What kind of resources do you have? How do I secure your finances or your stock in that point that you don't lose it? And you need to monitor them on a regular basis to understand environmentally, what am I trying to do with it? Is that cattle designed that I want to breed them? Do I want to just continue milking them, or am I taking it to the butcher today to go make my money? And there's different periods, there's different seasonal things that need to take place. We know that intuitively if you're a farmer, but when it comes to our money, that's not our job. And so if we put those fences up, first of all, I got to keep it, then I got to maintain it and know when and why and what is the triggering event that I'm going to use that money for. And so there's four basic categories. One, you have your legal, it's dealing with your prepaid legal, your trust or powers of attorneys, that sort of thing. Then that ties into the retirement because I have my money either in annuities or stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever it is that you may have. Life insurance, IULs are the new thing that most people don't know about. Then you have your property and casualty. We lose our homes in hurricanes, tornadoes. Well, now I have to take my retirement money out of there. People need to be aware of what kind of coverage they do and don't have. And then, of course, the biggest assets that you have that most people fail in my seminars and say, Daniel, what's your biggest asset? Everybody tells me their house, their money. And I like to argue the point and say, I think it's your health. Without your health, you're going to spend more money. Without your health, I can't enjoy the things that I have. So we try to build those fences to help people out to focus on the main thing I do is retirement, but you better be aware of what kind of health coverage you have. You need to be aware of what kind of coverage and liability you have on my property. If I've got young children, vicarious liability. Well, what's that? If you don't know, you need to give us a call. If environmental things can trigger it that I can lose my home, your retirement is now going to suffer. So the whole concept is we are retirement specialists, but we have to understand other things that are happening around you to protect that. So that was the concept of building financial fences.
Yeah. So that really helps you to have a more holistic view on what somebody is doing because retirement is not just about money, from that perspective. Actually, what I'm hearing you saying that it's more about lifestyle purpose, but also how do you go and protect all of those things because ultimately that's what we want. So how specifically when you're putting a plan together, how do you help your clients to essentially have both that lifestyle and also how do you help them with that purpose? Because again, at the end of the day, the financial business is never about money, and I think this is what a lot of people miss.
Amen.
How do you help clients to kind of plan for both of those lifestyle and purpose?
Again, great question. I'm impressed with your questions. And so if people are listening to this, it's like ask that same question. The more I have this little saying that the more you learn, the more you earn, because I'm here but trying to help people make money. That is a great question. I kind of broke it down from a military standpoint. Everybody likes to have like a mnemonic device. It's like what does these words mean? So I have a discussion. I ask people schedule a life planning session with me. Life comes at you fast, but what the mnemonic device is, L stands for legacy, I is for income, F is for finances, and E is for estate planning. So if I sit down with somebody, it's like, who are you? What do you have? Are you married? Are you single? Are you healthy? Are you not? Are you working? Are you not? What's your goals? You have people in your family. Are you trying to leave money to them? But there are certain things that happen in life. Sick, sued, died, disabled, divorced, disaster, or disability. I'll say that again. Sick, sued, died, disabled, disability, or divorce. Those things, if they happen, are triggering events. If one of those occurred, how does that impact your retirement planning? And it just isn't my 401k that I have because it's impacting what you said is my safety and security in my lifetime. It's my life. It's my prosperity so that I can enjoy my time. I've got customers go, I don't want to do anything, just sit on the porch and play with my grandkids. Other people have a bucket list. They want to travel around the world and do things. So we get personal with you to ask you who you are, what are your objectives, and what are the goals, and then go backwards and go forward and go, what are we going to do to make that happen? Very much like playing checkers. We're going to maneuver a few things, but when we get to the end, it now can jump over and you have a more powerful plan that you can do things. So a lot of people just put money in, and they don't really realize what's going on. And it's age based, Daniel. I'm 65 and I'm going to retire. Well, how much will you have when you retire? I don't know. And they don't know. But if we talk about that 3 years or 5 years prior to and go, here's the things we need to change. That was a good plan 2 years ago, but the economy changed. We ought to alter and modify that plan so that it's on track with you. And so we very much like to personalize what's going on. And maybe it's the same plan that somebody, your next door neighbor, has, but maybe not. And so it's not a one size fits all. It has to be custom built to who you are, to your objectives.
Yeah, I think the one disservice I think the financial industry as a whole, and I'm generalizing in here, is that a few years ago they made it all about financial planning and made it all about a number. What is the number that you need to have when you're going to retire? And I think that gives a false sense of comfort to a lot of people, because you can have a great number and the stock market goes down if it's all in the stock market, and your number could be half very quickly. So I think when it comes down to planning, as you mentioned, it's not just thinking, oh, well, I just need to go and have a number, have a certain amount of money. You need to do planning before, because things change all the time. I know when I was doing financial plans for my clients, I told them as soon as I delivered the plan, I said, you need to understand this is already outdated, because the numbers have changed from what you gave me to where it is right now. So the financial plan is not, hey, this is the destination. It allows us to make sure that we know the direction we're going, and then go and make adjustments as we're going. So I know a lot of retirees struggle with knowing when to spend and when to save. When you work with clients, how do you help them to balance, to basically enjoy their wealth without the fear of running out?
Again, that's the customization, that determining what's important to you and what number do we have to have mathematically to be able to meet your current budgets. Remember, I talked about income and finances. Not to be insulting, but sometimes I ask people what's the difference, and they shrug their shoulder. What do you mean that what's the difference between income and finances? How does it impact me if I'm sick or incapacitated? What's the difference in my finances, my income? What could be attached and what's not? I get into a lawsuit because I didn't have the right kind of property and casualty, and I don't have an umbrella, and now I've got a $600,000 lawsuit on me. Well, do I want my wages attached? Do I want something garnished, or could I have an insurance policy to cover that? So how do we help people? It really comes down to customization. But you asked a question there, and there's so many different little roads to go down. But one of the simple things is when I talk about life insurance, and let alone talk about the technicalities that's going to go into the policy, most people don't understand the word life insurance. So let's just start. Here's the book. And life insurance has two things: it has a living benefit and a death benefit. We drive our cars on the parkway, we park our cars in the driveway, and we buy life insurance. And here's the advertising to mess your head up. When I buy life insurance, you mean a death benefit. So if I say life insurance, instantly people think death benefit. Life insurance all has a living benefit. Where does your whole life come in? It's tax free. And if you can get index universal life that are designed properly, why not use that? But people, when they hear life insurance, well, I'm not really interested in the death benefit. Their mind is triggered that life insurance means death benefit. It's a guarantee. Nobody worries about the fact that if I'm dead, I paid money into it. I have peace of mind knowing my family's going to get covered when I pass away. But yet at the same time, if you say, well, let's put money into a life insurance company that pays a living benefit, then there's all kind of questions. Well, how do we know it's going to be there? Well, it's going to be there when you're dead and you can't do anything about it. It's the same company. Why do you fear paying a living benefit? So sometimes the very most basic term is the most confusing, let alone talking about allocations and all of that kind of thing that's going on. But it really comes down to simple planning about, who are you, Daniel? What do you need to have? What's the dynamics of your family and your health? And what do you want to do? Do you want to retire early, or do you want to work 2 years extra just because you need that extra cash? And you don't You don't know what you don't know is my little tagline. My job is help ask you questions and say, let's figure that out and give you the information you need to make a good, sound decision that can give you peace of mind to sleep at night and not worry. As a citizen, yes, am I concerned about the economy? That's why I've got red, white, and blue flags behind me. I love our country. But at the same time, I want peace of mind knowing that I did the right thing, that regardless of what happens to the economy, I can be guaranteed that in life or death, my family has their money. That's powerful.
Yeah. You bring a great point, and I think this is one of the things that in any conversation communication, you have two individuals that are talking, but each of them have what I call a different frame or even different definitions of what something means. And what you bring out, I think, is making sure that people, when you're saying something, like use the example of life insurance, that you're talking about it from a different perspective than somebody else. A lot of people 100% agree with you. They think about life insurance is all about the death benefit. This is the funny part about English language. Like you said, you know what, we park our, park our cars in the driveways and we drive on parkways. Like, hold on, how does this make sense? English is a second language for me. But I think this is where it all comes down to. It's so confusing and it kind of becomes a bit of a, word salad sometimes where we're going through and not understanding. So the most important thing and what I get about you with your book and how you operate with clients is that you want to get onto the same side of the table. You want to be sitting beside your client. And what I'm hearing you saying, like, let's just first define what is the definitions and everything so that we're sitting in here and figure out what is the problem so that together we can go and attack the problem or the challenge or the impact that it has. And
That's
one
right.
of the things, and I agree with you, what the biggest expense is, I will tell you, actually, I think the biggest expense that we all have is not knowing something. And I use the example in my business, if somebody wants to go and let's just pick out a number, make $1 million, and if right now they're making $200,000, it's already costing them $800,000 not knowing how to make a million. Because if they knew how to make a million, they would already be making it. That means they don't know how to make it. But people don't look at the cost of not knowing something or not doing something. We don't look at that cost, and often it's greater. We only look at what is the cost. What is it going to cost me to do this? And I think, again, this is where looking at things from a little bit different perspective and you defining the words, what it actually means, is really important. Now, in the book, you also talk about different retirement personalities. How does knowing your financial personality impact your retirement decisions? Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Could you clarify the question? You talk about me or the customer?
You talked about the customer. In the book, when I read, you talk about like people have different like personalities when it comes around money and
Yeah.
how they view things.
Yes. As a communicator trying to reach out to people, you have some people that are systems type people. They really want to understand almost as a, in my world, if they were going to uh, look at all the numbers and digest it and spit it
You're talking
out.
like engineers, for an example. They would be
Yes,
into the
or
numbers.
actuary, people that it's like they're really just numbers and they don't want to hear a story. They just want to hear the numbers. But I have to make sure they understand why that number works or what can alter it to actually change that variable. And then you have other people that they it's funny that I've been sitting there talking to people that might be single ladies, and I'm single, but my at the time my shirt and tie was pressed and creased, and a lady look over go, who irons your shirts? It's like, well, I do, or they'll look at my fingernails and go, you've got manicured fingernails. Well, what did that have to do with anything I was trying to tell you, Sally? I'm in the middle of telling you everything about your retirement plan, and she looks at who irons your shirts. And that happened time and time and time again, that all of a sudden I realized she doesn't understand the numbers. She didn't even understand the stories. Can I trust you and your person? That's why I wrote the book about who I am, so that you can understand the fact she just simply is looking at me. Can I trust you to do the right thing for me, Mr. Wagner? That's what she's trying to tell me. The guys will go out and go look at my car to see when my car is cleaned, or what shape my car is in, because if you can maintain your car, you can maintain my finances. What does that have to do? Because a lot of times we've always heard the carpenter's got the worst house in the block, the mechanic's got the worst car. we're busy doing things, but I found that there's those personalities that just go, I need help. I want to trust you. Can I do that? And there's other people like, I don't care who you are. I'm not going to sit down and have dinner with you. I just want to know the numbers and I'm going to crunch it. So understanding the personalities of people out there is also going to sometimes determine whether people, and I'm sure in your former practice, you've heard of brokers wanting to talk about what's your risk tolerance. Are you conservative, moderate, or are you aggressive? Well, are you going to make that decision for me? Am I making it for you? And if I really don't know those terms and I pick something because if I'm conservative, they probably think I'm talking about how I'm voting or my political preference rather than my portfolio. And again, there is a basic term that your money is completely structured different from just moderate to conservative, but I don't know what that means financially. So the personalities are something we got to just sit down and kind of figure out who you are so that if you're the junkyard dog and you want to bite because somebody's coming across there, or you're the dog that wants to run up and lick you, people have the same personalities. I'm either going to be protective or I just run in my house and tell me what to do. And if we don't know that, I think your plan can be amiss, that it may be designed differently. Not that it won't work, but it could have been a whole lot better. Back to your point, what's my loss of income? I have income, but if you really look at even 2%, which is sometimes a management fee that a broker charges you, do you realize that a 2% management fee, by the way, we don't have any, but a 2% management fee over retirement is over $30,000. And I'd bend over and pick up $30,000 if I found it. And so what are you losing by not knowing what to do? And it's not that it didn't work. And just saying I lost my money in the stock market, I'd love to have that question talked with you, and I'll reserve that for later. But people say I got my money back, and generally, no, they don't. It's plain math. If I had lost 10% and I had 90,000, I go, how much money do you have to get back to if you would have not lost in the market? They would say 9%. That's $99,000. You don't even have what you had, let alone the loss of growth. That if you had an annuity that didn't lose and the market went up by 10%, I'd now have 110,000 and you only have 99,000. Repeat that historically over the course of 20 years. To your point, Daniel, how much money did you actually lose? That is significant. And then people like, well, let me think about it. You know, hey, 2 and 2 is 4, 5 and 5 is 10. I'm not going to argue with you, Daniel, because they already know that you're nuts by not taking the pile with $10. And if I argue with you, then people are going to think I'm nuts. So sometimes it's like, this is just basic math. There's not a lot to it. Yet the personalities, you've got to get to that person and understand, can we just add 2 and 2 and 5 and 5 and say, which one's bigger? Take that pile. Package A represents the bigger pile. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's a great, and again, using the analogies that you're using are great. What it really comes down to is, and we already spoke about this, that the financial business is not about numbers, but the numbers don't lie. Like the numbers, like 1 + 1 is always 2. I mean, I know other people that get creative, 1 + 1, you can get 4 and all of that. But when it comes down to numbers, they don't lie. But the financial business is more about, and I think you brought it out, about personalities. It's about people, do they know and like and trust you? Like you mentioned, there are some people like, what the numbers just makes their head spin. And partly is, I believe that nobody has ever sat down to them and explained it to them in a way that they can understand it. And this is again what I really enjoyed about reading your book, were the analogies and the stories that you had, because it takes it from like, well, hold on, this is really big concepts. But when you start talking about a fence, you start talking about cows, you start talking about tractors and these type of things, I can now relate to it, and it becomes a lot more, relational, and what you're able to do. And I think this is where, being a financial advisor myself, the financial industry does a huge disservice where, often all they want to know is, where's your money? How can I get my hands on it? And how can I keep it for as long as I can? And they don't really, and again, I'm generalizing here, they don't really care about that personal side of things. And it's a matter of you sitting down with somebody, is having that conversation, finding out what their personality is. And it sounds like you kind of learned this through doing things, because like you mentioned, somebody asking you a question, who pressed your shirt. I mean, if somebody asked me that, I'd be like going, what, you supposed to press your shirt? Again, I'm a little bit different generation than you are. My parents would be like, everything had to be ironed. I mean, I remember my mother was ironing the towels,
Yes,
and I'm like, what for? So these are, again, a little bit different generational gap from that perspective. So, you know what, when you work with people, what do you feel is kind of the biggest misconception that they have about retirement planning, and that whole idea?
I think it's a principle of, let's use an analogy of parents with kids, that I put the empty milk carton in the refrigerator and somehow in the morning it's filled up. I threw my clothes in the hamper and yet they're folded magically in my drawer. And I go to bed even though mom and dad are cranky and I don't like certain things, but my house is warm. There's that, being that naive is what happens, because until the child grows up, doesn't understand it, until you've actually been retired, lost money, or watched a family or friend. Why do people jump off of bridges? We've seen that in movies. Why do people get scared? Why do people threaten one another? Why are there divorces? Why are there children going through traumatic experiences? Because of the lack of understanding about financial planning. I think that what you and I are talking about today with retirement planning, outside of choosing your mate, tell me something else that equates to being that big of a decision that you're going to make in your adult life. And yet, you probably made it when you were 25 to go get your job. And I'll prove my point. I went to a large mill the other day. I teach first aid and CPR just as a community outsourced thing because I was a Navy corpsman, but they had a sign that was, I don't know, 30 yards long. It was as big as a building, and it said best 401k plan. Check for details. Well, I couldn't help myself and went to the HR guy and said, "Well, what's your 401k plan?" "Well, we have this page here and we check these boxes." And I go, "What do they mean?" He says, "I don't know. That's what everybody checks, and I'm just told to do it." He could not tell me what the plan was. How many people, whether you're a government work or whatever, here's my plan. I have no choice in the matter about what I do, how it's invested, or whatever. I'm going to be told what to do, and I don't know anything about it. And so all of a sudden now, for 30 years that I could have, if you talk to somebody like myself, designed a plan for me and my family, that I might have been able to retire at 55 instead of 65, and made sure that my kids were taken care of, and even had a college fund set up through my retirement plan, again, like through an IUL. People just don't know. And they statistically, I read that the average person spends time planning one vacation. They spend more time planning one vacation than they do the retirement plan. There's nobody at your work to really explain it. And what they are explaining is what their corporation wants you to do versus other options that you could or perhaps should do. So the biggest thing is going to come back down to education again, and go, what can I do? How do I fight the system that's telling me what to go do? And they just need, again, to talk to somebody to find out options.
Yeah, I used to say to people make, take more time making a decision what grade of gas they're going to buy than they do think about retirement.
I
It's just the
concur.
same thing. And how people need to think about retirement, like literally, you're getting another job. Like most people, I suppose you probably had the same experience talking to a lot of people, and a lot of them are like, okay, you know what? I've been retired for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks being at the golf course and playing every day, it's like reruns. It's the same thing over and over again. I'm going crazy. I need to go and do something. A lot of people don't realize that, yeah, their whole life they've been told, hey, retirement, you're going to retire, you got to do whatever you want. But then they get to retirement and they're like bored because they don't realize, like, it's like another job, right? Like it's kind of like the husband and wife, and at some point the wife's going to go to the husband going like, hey, yeah, it's death to do apart, but not having lunch every single day with you, like, forget it, get out of the house. I want some time by myself, or doing some things, because so much of our lives, right, when people are working, we're separated. And then when you're retired, you're with your spouse. And I think, I believe the statistics are, I know I read this somewhere, I don't know exactly where, that most divorces now are at the age of, like, over the age of 60. Primarily because of that, because now you have two people that most of their lives they were working, they were busy doing stuff, raising kids, and now suddenly they're spending every single moment together. That starts to create some tension often, right? So it's a matter of doing some planning for it and understanding it, that, when you're talking about retirement, it's almost looking at it as another career, as another, like, people are going to spend 20, 30, 40 years in retirement, and they have to really go and plan for it because it's just not going to happen on it, by itself. And it becomes really one of those, like I said, almost like career ideas. And I, like you, like I said, it's one of the most important things you're going to do, as aside from some of
Great.
the other decisions that you made, or the big decisions, because it will last 20, 30 years. And what you're going to be doing during depends on what you did before, or the planning, or a lot of the planning that you have done before.
I agree. And that affects your whole family and trickles down to your adult kids, even at that point, as far as the relationship with my mom and dad and how I get to spend my time and so forth. So I concur.
Yeah. Now, many retirees worry about passing down. We were talking about kids and grandchildren, passing down their wealth to their children and grandchildren, but they also don't want to create a burden or unintended consequences. How do you help your clients think, strategically about legacy planning?
Well, if we go back to part of our earlier conversation, that if I just take, which is our company mascot, as a cow, and we have named her Cash. So you've heard of Holy Cow, but you have a cash cow. What you're talking about is the cash cow, my retirement. And again, retirement planning is it's everything we're talking about. And the spider webs that go off of that, again, is the legal department talking about revocable living trust or powers of attorneys for healthcare, asset management, living wills. So, and even identity theft. Let's not forget that every 2 seconds in America, somebody just lost their identity. I am not talking, and I'm going to say it again, I am not talking about the bank that says, oh, somebody took your money and we'll refund that. I am talking about you not being you, that you could be arrested, incarcerated because you're somebody else. You could go to the hospital and be allergic to a certain medication, or already had, for example, your appendix removed, but now somebody else's chart is now your chart. That's significant. Somebody could actually take your house and use your credit because I am now you. That's a real threat in America right now that people need to pay attention to. That's in the legal department. So even if you did everything right and somebody else took it, I'm always a proponent. It's not what you make, but it's what you keep. And so you ask a very valid question, is the reason why I look diversified. I am a specialist in retirement planning, but as a specialist in retirement planning, I need to understand, if I was a heart surgeon, hey, my job is just to remove the heart or to do things. But do I need to understand nutrition? Do I need to understand other physiological things that are taking place, allergies that you may have? Those conditions make that job much more simple. Retirement planning must or ought to include discussions about, is a revocable living trust important for you? And if it is, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice, but we can read things, and we see in every city in the United States there's a probate court. Why is it there? And if I could avoid that to save my money and to save that legacy and or the anguish or agony that I'm putting my kids and family through, why would I want to do that? So if I have, first of all, I get sick, I've got durable powers of attorney. I can issue to my wife and kids to say, take care of me. And then when I do pass away, now I've got a successor trustee that can just manage the estate without court interference, time, cost, delays, and public record. And I'd love to talk more about that. I don't know how much time I have, but that is such an important question, because that's where all of a sudden my legacy, I play a game in my seminars and say, Daniel, play along with me. Let's just make it live, because you don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say word association. If I say milk, you think what?
It does body good.
Okay, does a body good. Some people would say cookies. If I say peanut butter, you think
Jam. Okay, I see where you're going with it. The milk
okay.
was not the best thing for me to go with, and there's a bit of a reason for that. I don't drink milk. I haven't drank it for a while, and that's the commercials that we're running here, so that's
Right?
fine.
But
Now I understand where you're going with this. You threw me for a loop a little bit there, because I literally went blank. So, all right,
I
let's go.
saw that. But if I say fish, what do you think of?
Water.
Okay. So for me, see, here's the point. You say fish, I immediately think of dad. My dad's passed away, but my favorite thing to do with my dad was fishing. That's legacy. So if my dad preached his whole life, do this, be frugal, save your money, don't lose your money, work hard, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And yet, if all of my life my dad said this stuff, and his legacy was, it didn't work, you lost your money, all of those principles that you tried to teach me all went out the window when you died. what is my memory of my dad? It is not the fond things, because instantly I thought fishing trips to, you lost your money, you lost the farm, you put mom out, and mom had to go downsize. Look where all of that stuff goes, simply because I'm talking about legacy. And so when we talk about trust, we talk about things that isn't just retirement, it's your family name. If I could just share one more story, when I was very, very young in this business, I added up everything. Back in the day, there was like a cash register, had a little tape on it, and you had to add it all up. And if you made a mistake, you had to start over again. I added this up for an hour for this lady that owned a farm. And I said, here's what your net worth is. And she said, that's wrong. And I thought, oh my golly. So I sat and typed and typed and typed, and I did it again. And she reached up, because I always said, if you were my mom, here's what I do. Knowing what I know, here's what I do. So she decided, if you were my son, and she went in the back of my head and said, that's not right. And what I learned about this is not the schools and the colleges thing. It's about listening to older people that have lived through something and implementing it. She said, that's not right. How could you mean it? I've got the two ticker tapes that are right here that are showing the same number. My legacy, my namesake, for my kids not fighting and going to court, that's worth more than the money. Well, she didn't say it that way, but see, that taught me from the age of 20 on up, make sure that I design plans that the namesake, the family name, is intact along with the money. Because if the money's not there and the name is, or vice versa, you're not happy. And so your namesake with your trust to protect your money from probate court, from other people, one in every three wills are successfully challenged and overturned. And look, mom and dad, if you're listening, I know, and that if you sat your kids down around the kitchen table, they don't always agree. So you have to make some decisions to give somebody the legal authority to say, I'm making the decision for the family based on what you left me in charge with. Otherwise, we have a dispute. Then all of a sudden, things are very simple. And if you say fish, I think, boy, dad and I used to have some really good trout fishing seasons, and I'm right back on the track to my dad's legacy. Not because, oh, dad died and left mom and all of us in a mess. And those are triggering events. They're very traumatic for people. And you're a grown man, and I say fish, and you think dad was bad because everything he lived for didn't work out, or dad took me on good fishing trips. How do you want your legacy to be? Get trusts and things set up to protect your assets, so that there's not all these legal squabbles going on in your family. Like the mom said, it's worth more than the money.
Yeah. I think what you're bringing up again is making sure everybody's on the same page and everybody's got the same definitions of what you're saying. Because,
Mm-hmm.
you asked me those questions and it was just fascinating and I'm going over it. My frame was a little bit different from what you were going and what you were looking for. And you're like going, hey, listen, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, milk and cookies, right? Again, I will tell you this. My background growing up in Czechoslovakia, milk and cookies wasn't a thing. Milk and cookies came later on when I came to Canada. And even though it was somewhat, indoctrinated in me, and now, yeah, well, yeah, it makes sense. Milk and cookies, Santa Claus, and all of that stuff. But again, my past was a little bit different. And again, not understanding that, and when you're helping somebody, and we talked about this, the financial industry or the financial business is not about the money. It's about the relationship. When I was an advisor, I learned this from another advisor, Lee Brower, where he had the Lee Brower quadrants. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but he talked about that everybody has, there is four assets that you have, right? Outside of financial assets, there is three other type of assets that everybody has. And the first asset, he said, are core assets. This is your family, your health, your beliefs, right? These are the things that are really important to you. Then there were experiential assets, which were your vocation, your education, your schooling, your knowledge, your skills. So that was your experience. The third asset was contributory, and in contributory where philanthropy, like your giving and all of this, and then he also put in there taxes. And most people go, what? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
taxes is an asset? Well, yeah, taxes are an asset because you get to decide how much you pay depending on how you structure your finances.
Yes, sir.
So it became an asset. But then the question I would ask, I would say, Mark, now we know that there's these four assets, right? We've got your core assets, we've got your experiential assets, contributory assets, and your financial assets. If you could only pass three of these four assets to your children, which one would you forego? And pretty well 100%, 99% of people said, well, finances. I know if I give them core assets, I give them, experiential assets, and I give them, contributory assets, and they understand those, finances are just going to be there because that's how life works, right?
Is
You
that kind of
said
like the analogy? Teach somebody how to fish, and they always have fish. You give them a fish, and they just have the fish.
yeah.
Because is that what you kind of mean that
It's essentially that could be viewed in a similar way. I'm making the story a little bit shorter because we don't have a lot of time to go into that. But what was fascinating, then I would ask is, so why do we always only talk about finances where you're sitting here telling me the numbers don't really matter? Because what matters is all
Mhm.
the other stuff. The numbers are just there to help you to get there. But what's
Yes, it's
really
a tool.
important,
Yes,
yeah, it's 100%. It's a tool, like money in itself, like the dollar bills. It's just a temporary value hold. Like money in itself doesn't really mean anything. I mean, we all have a social agreement that $100 is worth $100. Is it really worth $100? Well, we all have I'll call it a social agreement that it's $100, and we all believe it is until one day we don't, and then that's going to be a different situation. So 100%, that's where it all comes down to. And again, it's making sure that, going back to that, everybody has the same understanding. And what legacy is, I think most people think legacy is about the money, but I think what you've mentioned and what I just said, often money helps you to get there and helps you to create it, but it's not just about the money. It's all the other things that are important, and the money is just there to help to, define it or help to, build it essentially, right?
I agree. Well said.
So, you kind of mentioned that, and I want to go a little bit deeper into this. What was one of the toughest financial conversations you've had to had with a client, and how did you navigate it? Meaning, like, do you understand what I mean by that?
Go ahead, illuminate, because my mind's got a couple options. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
narrow it
no, no,
down.
like you were with a client and they're literally, you see what the challenges or the issues that they had, and they were like not seeing it, and you were trying to have a conversation with them to really explain, what's going on and kind of reveal, like, listen, this is the truth. Like we've talked about, numbers don't lie, but they had a hard time kind of accepting it, I guess would be the word.
Well, there's so many stories, literally thousands of them, because of just what has happened in the last 48 hours. It's probably to the surface. So I'll go after that apple and bob for it. I remember a fella by the name of Mr. Burfield, and he was an older gentleman, and then he had tradition of how he did things with his finances. And don't tell me. Okay, so let's find out who you are and let's have a conversation. Let's just get down to some of the money, and let's just, talk about a few things. And we finally had a knockdown drag out with words. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that means this. And it's like, well, duh, but yes, thank you. So now we're on the same road, heading the same direction. And then all of a sudden it's like, here's my money, design it, set it up so when I pass away, my wife can. Well, he did. And his wife got the money and was ended up later on spending time living in her daughter's. But we structured her money because she loved to play bingo. Everybody knows her, knows she did it. She had enough money to play bingo to take care of herself. And so now, because grandma did it, grandpa did it, now all the sons and daughters did it, and now the grandkids did it. And just this past week, I'm on the fourth generation of little kids that were setting money up because do what you did for grandpa. But that knockdown, drag out conversation of let's just deal with the dynamics of your family, the traditions. What does money mean? Is it conservative? What are you trying to do? And what is your ultimate goal? Let's not look at the tool that you used, because in him, what the analogy was, hey, just not only but a couple generations ago, Wyatt Earp was running around whacking people in the back of the head with a pistol, and people were sitting at the bar buying things with gold dust. And the cowboy would yank out his bullet and hand it to somebody and say, here's a shot. That's why a drink is called a shot at the bar. And then we came up with currency. Well, we know from the Canadian to Czechoslovakia to here, there's different currency. But we saw in America, the North and the South had two different currencies. A war took place, and that currency wasn't worth anything anymore. Ooh, that didn't work, did it, Grandpa? Well, then they came up with credit cards. And he was one of those guys resistant, like, I'm not going to get a credit card. But finally, here's a J.C. Penney or a Sears Roebuck card so he could go get stuff for his car. Well, credit cards came along, and now we have digital currency. So things change, but there's digital currency. But what he didn't realize that there was things like annuities, life insurance, IUL programs that say these are other tools. The amalgamation from gold dust to an IUL is significant. How can that help you and your family? There's another tool here. You are old enough to know that things changed. You're going to have to change with it. We saw the cowboy movies. Grandpa, we're not wearing our six guns into town anymore. The Indians are gone. Well, I'm always going to, hey, this is not the same town. It's not the same era. Hang up your gun. Having that conversation with them, you need to be wise enough to realize it's not the same era. Things don't work the same way. What can we do to help the new era when you're here? And finally, it's like, that makes sense. And now I'm on the fourth generation of being able to help the family, all because of one brutal conversation. It was very honest and got down to it, man to man. Let's use analogies, let's talk numbers, and then let's talk the legacy. It isn't the number, but how do you want to be remembered taking care of his family? Now 4 generations have been helped because of that conversation.
Yeah, that's a great story. Often when I tell people, listen, we don't drive around Model Ts anymore. You know, a lot of people drive in Teslas, right? So I mean, I'm sure he wasn't driving in a Model T car. Maybe he was, but I don't think he was.
Well, on a certain day, you might like to yank it out of the garage and go take it
no,
for a ride. But
I get it, but not a daily driver though.
exactly. Yeah, good analogy.
Yeah. So listen, wealth isn't just about numbers, as we just talked about on a statement. It's about really freedom. How do you personally define, successful retirement? I get it. Everybody's got their own definition, but I just want to find out from you, how do you kind of look at it? How do you define successful retirement?
Well, success is being able to accomplish your realistic goals and understanding that you may like things, but it comes back to math and science. People all over the world love chocolate, and some like vanilla. I'm a guy that, just for the argument, I like butterscotch. You've now asked me a personal opinion, and I have one. But the beauty about financial planning is it's math and science. The numbers don't lie. So if we can take your personal preference as to how you want to see your lifestyle and design those numbers, you have to do this or modify that behavior or that concept of what's going to happen, so that while you're alive and either sick or healthy, that my money is working for me. When I've passed away, my money is now transferred to through the legacy aspects. That success is that when I can accomplish my goal and have peace of mind about it, that I'm not being fearful every day, that my family can have peace, because that stress that causes sickness, that stress that causes a divorce, that money that helps go into the community through the church and the actions that you spend your money. Now we have success that what's happening is the community, starting with your family, has not been infiltrated by misaligned ideals, that you can accomplish what you want, and now everything's in order. That is success.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, everybody's got their kind of different views. So, you know what, if your clients could describe you in one word, what do you think that word would be, if any? And why?
Going full speed, I guess. I'm like the Duracell bunny. I talk a lot because I've got limited time. In one word, I just say energetic, or
So,
maybe passionate. I
so
don't know.
energize the bunny, it's 2 words, but maybe that's what I've just heard you say. So
Put the hyphen in there. I keep going.
yeah, just keep going. Yeah. So listen, we're in closing down here. Just if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice about money or life, what would it be?
Take the time to talk to qualified people, not just mentors. Again, going back to church stuff, maybe there was a good elder, a good deacon, a good mentor, but he didn't have the vision to understand in the area or this arena of what's going on. So, for example, my dentist was a great guy, but I had a flat tire and my car was broke, and he was giving me advice because he liked to work on cars. Do I talk to him or do I go to my mechanic? And my mechanic, I was sitting there like talking to him about my car, but my tooth was really hurting. It was like, well, he had some home remedies. Who do you pick out to listen to? Because even though they're love trusted, maybe even family members, maybe even ideal model leaders in the community. If they don't specialize in what you're doing, why are you talking to them? Why are you listening to them? And it's funny that when I go out, I just literally came here from my house. It's like, here's all the information, but I need to talk to my son-in-law and see if he agrees. What credentials does your son-in-law have? He's now going to be the deciding factor about your legacy, and it's boneheaded. Why is that person going to make decisions for you? In the medical community, if because that's where part of my background was, if I'm your doctor and you've got cancer, don't I send you to an oncologist? If I have a lawyer now, see what's going to happen. Is he an elder estate planning attorney or just a bankrupt attorney? Anybody can create legal documents. Anybody can give financial advice. Anybody can tell you what to go do. But is he a specialist in retirement planning? Is that what they do? Younger self would have said, talk to people in all the areas of my life that specialize in what they do, and then follow their advice, because that makes sense. There's wisdom in that. That would be, for me in my life, a whole lot better. Even with an insurance guy, do you specialize in what I do?
Yeah.
Find a specialist.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think this is where it comes down to is find a specialist, kind of make sure that you understand what somebody is saying and what is the definition, and that you're both talking about the same thing, right? So, Mark, this has been a great conversation. Your book, Building Financial Fences, is such a great, valuable resource. And I know our listeners, will walk away with a lot of insights on how to protect and enjoy their retirement. Before we wrap up, if someone wants to learn more about you, your work, or your book, or to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
First of all, do it now. Don't procrastinate. But we have a website, AmericanAtlantic.net. That's the easiest way, because all the resources of digitally contacting us, or phone numbers, faxes, all that kind of stuff. Red, white, and blue, that's who we are, coast to coast. We're there for you. We've got offices in Missouri and all throughout the country that we can always talk to your people. Estate planning, we're in 49 states. But if you just go to AmericanAtlantic.net, or just simply call off of one of those phone numbers that's listed there, you can always reach me pretty much, throughout most of the working day from east to west coast. We work a lot. We've got a lot of people that can help take your calls. And that's the simplest thing to do. If you want the book, it's on Amazon. Actually, there's 3 books there. Building Financial Fences, Life's Final Gate, and Don't Worry, Retire Happy. But the book we're talking about today, Building Financial Fences, actually got to international best-selling listed there. And so people were able to reckon with the book and kind of identifying a little bit. But that's the easiest way, is either Amazon to get the book or AmericanAtlantic.net.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. Again, thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Finance Leaders Podcast for more conversations with thought leaders in the financial industry. Until next time, take care and keep building your financial future on solid principles.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finance Leaders Retirement Insights.